moving forward to another rookie quarterback in Drake May, who eventually got his time to shine in New England. All the talk, right since the last game ended, we were in Detroit and we watched the whole thing go down as we're watching the 1:00 games, and Joe Milton gets to start for New England. And then, I think it was 90 minutes after the game, they decide they're going to move on and they fired Gerard Mayo. And I think ever since then, it's just been, what is New England going to do? What are they going to do? You hire Mike Vrabel, and you just said it. The thing you have to show your team is, what direction do we want to move in? And the Patriots said, we want to be really good on defense. We know everybody's talking about our offense. What receivers are we going to get? What left tackle are we going to go get? They said, we're going to get the guys that we're aiming for. We're going to aim for some guys, offense and defense, but we're not going to sit there and cry over the guys we don't miss. Reportedly, they tried to go after Ronnie Stanley. He signed back. They said, that's not going to hold us back. Carlton Davis, Milton Williams, Harold Landry, Robert Spillane, they went all out and they upgraded the defense. And the thing that stuck out to me of, being in all of the New England circles and following a lot of the media people up there is this team lacks a lot of different positions. So, yeah, are there some positions that stick out more than others, especially on the offensive side because they've been bad on offense for a few years now? Yes, but overall, when you have to upgrade, you try to get the best available players. You try to also get culture guys. You get a Milton Williams who's just coming off a Super Bowl, a Robert Spillane who's known as a guy that'll run downhill and hit you in the mouth. And all of these guys have some connection back to guys on the staff. So it does feel like they said, you know what, we want to get the best players. We also want to make sure we get players we know and we have an expectation for what they're going to bring to this New England Patriots team.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought that was really well said. And if you think about it, Ben Johnson, the first 3 guys that he signed were offensive linemen. Vrabel, the first 14 guys they signed were defensive guys. So it was a little bit reminiscent of your days in New England. It seemed like every year in the first round, New England would take, a defensive player who was going to be a great player for 10 years. And they said, all right, Brady, you figure it out on the other side. And, and it seemed like a good formula. So I think Vrabel learned well. I do think they are going to have to help support Drake May and from a personnel standpoint. And the thing you always have to do is you have to pull back on free agency and the draft, and you have to look at them together. And I think a lot of people fail to do that. Okay, so how season ends, how are we going to acquire players? What's the resources? Well, re-sign our own guys, and then you have free agency, and then you have the draft. And we always used to joke that, boy, wouldn't it be great if the draft were first and then free agency? Because then you figure out really what you need. So you have to kind of do these preemptive strikes. And I think you have to look at the whole landscape. You have to look at it all together and say, okay, we got these 6 months to get guys. Who are re-signing? Who are the cornerstone players that we need, or the role players that we need from our own team? And then you say, okay, how does free agency look relative to the draft? It's heavy on defensive linemen in the draft. Maybe we can get one there. We don't have to go crazy. Or, hey, it's light on defensive linemen. We have holes. We got to go get Milton Williams. He's one of those type of guys. So I think if you look at it through that landscape, through that lens, and see the entire landscape, you have a better chance of building your team the right way by the time you strap it up in training camp. And I think that's probably what they're doing. They went heavy on defense. They wanted veteran guys. They targeted guys they knew that they felt like they could get. They had some money to go get them. And now you pull back and you say, okay, what else? Who are the other little free agents that we can add to our offense and put them in certain roles? And then who can we draft to kind of grow with Drake May on that side of the ball? Because that's what they have to do. But there's no doubt that Vrabel made a statement from the outset that we're going to get better on defense. Defense wins championships. This is how you're going to have to this is how we're going to have to build it. And we're going to use some resources. We're going to go get some guys. One thing you got to remember, the first couple of days of free agency, you're paying retail. You're paying retail plus, right? I mean, Milton Williams was a pass rusher for Philly. He didn't play on early downs, right? Now, he had a couple sacks in the Super Bowl and really flashed, and I think it's a heck of a signing for them, but I think they're paying him $26 million a year. So that's a lot of money for that. But, hey, we're a team that has these needs. We have some money. Let's go do it. as long as he's the kind of guy that represents what we want, and he appears to be that way. But make no mistake about it, Vrabel wants to get that defense right.
Yeah, and that's what stuck out to me. Like Milton Williams became the highest paid player ever in New England Patriot history. When you say those things, and that's no disrespect to him, but it is true. And right when these signings happen, people right away are like, "Is that a good signing?" Like I saw people debating Carlton Davis, like, "Is this a good signing?" It's like the truth of the matter is, no matter what the payment for the guy is, if he executes and he helps your team, and it's a good signing. Like there's a plan when you do this. So you want all these things to happen. You have to pay the number depending on how much you want that guy, what the market tells you. So like you said, all the reports came out that Milton Williams was headed to Carolina. Seemed like New England said the only way to get him is we have to go to this number. So, and I think the thing that sticks out for New England is they're probably not done. Mike Vrabel said before free agency opened up, their goal was to address their needs in free agency so that hopefully they can go into the draft and just get the best available players. And when you look, you just said it, there's some guys who they might be interested in who still haven't signed, or they're going to get released at the start of the new league year that'll come up in a few hours on Wednesday at 4:00. So you look at these different things and I'm like, well, if they go get a receiver, if they go get a left tackle, or maybe another offensive lineman, maybe they do exactly what Vrabel said. And it's almost like what a difference a year makes of they had all this money last year and they didn't go crazy and spend it in free agency. And now they realize like, hey, to be competitive in this league, we got to kind of change the direction. And I think overall, like you said, being in New England for all those years, it just felt like Bill said defense will be the main thing we hang our hat on because we can find guys on offense. And I think the one offensive guy they did sign so far was Mac Hollins, was a guy that we all loved, I think, from a media standpoint, because you paid attention to his entrance into the game all the time. But I think that was another message to the team of, hey, we're going to get a guy. He's going to play all four downs on offense. He'll be in there a little bit to block in the run game. He's going to catch some passes. Had his best year in Vegas with Josh McDaniels as the coordinator and head coach. But we're going to use this guy in every way possible. And I think it's one position from a wide receiver standpoint. They have a new guy that can be a leader. Is he going to be your star player on offense? Probably not. But I think for those guys in that receiver room, he's going to be a guy that I think they're going to have to look at and say, okay, how do we become pros? How do we get better year after year, day after day? And a guy like Mac Hollins, not a big name, but I'm sure some of those young players are going to see his work ethic and be like, oh, wow. Like he's working that hard just to, be a special teams player and maybe a 3 or 4 wide receiver. We're not doing nearly enough if we think we're these type of guys to be the guy. So I think that was a kind of character building offensive signing that'll help them out throughout the year.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, it's another message. You said it. Core special teams player. He's going to block in the run game. This is what we value. The one tricky thing, though, and you've heard me say this before, the Tom Brady factor is real in New England. And so you have to be careful of copying what New England did for all those years because they had the ultimate eraser. We've talked about that before, you and I. Sometimes
I use it all the time when I tell people, I'm like, Jason Garrett said, the ultimate eraser.
Yeah, it's true. Like, we used to, DeMarcus Ware would make a sack. And we'd be, we're playing great defense. And I'm like, we might not be playing great defense. He just might beat 3 guys to sack the quarterback. So sometimes you have to look kind of below that top level, right? Nick Saban talks about the process, right? Not the result. Sometimes the result can distort the evaluation. And when you have one of those guys that erases all the issues, and I think New England felt that when Tom left, and then, Mac Jones goes in there and, he's the 15th pick of the draft and he's just trying to be, a quarterback in this league. And the drop off was so substantial that all those things that Brady erased, Mac Jones is just trying to, go through his progressions and throw it to the right guy. I mean, he can't do those things. So I do think Drake May is going to need help. He's shown a lot of really good signs of being someone who can be their quarterback for a long time. But I think you have to be careful about saying it's all about the defense and this is how we did it back then. I do think they need to bolster it. And they recognize that. And I think Vrabel's comments about addressing the needs in free agency so you can draft purely, I think that's a really important thing. And that was always a goal of ours. You never want to be sitting and looking at that draft board saying, we need a left tackle. All of a sudden, you're pushing the left tackles way up the board ahead of players that are better than them at other positions. So if you can solidify it as best you can going into the draft and then take the best players, that's the best way to build the team.
Yeah, I'll never forget last year when you said, and we were talking about the quarterbacks coming out, and you said the thing when you evaluate, quarterbacks, but really all positions is this guy this type of player, number 2, number 3 pick a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Like, we always have to think about that because, like you just said, if you start moving up this positional need and now you take this guy at 4 overall, when realistically you're like, man, a year ago, this guy would have been a second-round pick, but we really need him, because then what ends up happening is in 2 or 3 years, you need that position again because you drafted a guy that wasn't going to be good at that position overall. He just was the best available at the position in the draft. And when you said that to me, I started to think back to all of these different guys, not just when I was on the Patriots, but on any team that would end up getting drafted. And then in 2 years or 3 years, you're playing against that guy and they're on their second team, they're a backup, and they get in the game and you're like, damn, wasn't that the guy that was like the number 2 pick or 3 pick?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens so fast. So it's an important factor.
Especially in this day and age that we live in, because all these other outlets create the draft before it happens. This is the best quarterback. This is the best this is the order of these guys. And if you don't watch it, if you're in a decision-making mode, you can subconsciously listen to this and you're not doing the evaluations yourself. And I'm all for mock drafts and all of that, but you have to put that stuff aside. You're almost looking at mock drafts to see how other people might perceive a player more than how you perceive them. And to that point, if you go down to my garage right now, I mean, I have the draft binders going back for the last 20 years of evaluations. And every so often you go back and you say, okay, what did I really think of this guy? Yeah. What do I think of this guy compared to this guy? If they were in the draft together, what happened to this guy in the NFL, right? We thought he was great, but then he was kind of an okay player. Would we have thought this guy was better or worse than him? And so I think if you keep thinking about that, the spectrum of players, not only this year, but through the years. And, you made the comment, you're drafting the guy a couple of years later. I can remember when we first got married, we're thinking about buying this couch, and this couch cost whatever, I'll say $100. This one costs $200. Let's get the cheaper one. Well, you realize when you buy the cheaper one, about 6 months later, you're buying another couch, So sometimes it's better to buy the more expensive one right from the start. Oh, we're really going to draft this guy this high? Yes, because he's a really good player, and you're not going to remember that you picked him with the 9th pick of the draft or the 12th pick of the draft. Yeah. You're not going to remember. You're just going to remember he's a really good player.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.